Hello, welcome to Walking with Change. This is Carla. And before we get into the show, I want to just say a huge thank you to Awareness for the fabulous show music and send big love and thanks to Chris Bergman for the wonderful tech and show art. And if you want to support the show, you can do that by subscribing to the show wherever you listen. Just hit that little button. Write a review if you feel inclined. Or if you want to become a member, you can head over to Patreon/Walking with Change. You can join for free or become a sustainer, whatever you want. Okay, thanks. And now onto the show. The following episode is a conversation with the brilliant Raúl Zibechi. Raúl is from Uruguay. He is a writer, popular educator, and journalist. He has written numerous books, with his newest book being Constructing Worlds Otherwise. Raúl joined me for the very first episode of Walking with Change to talk about societies and movement, the many anti-capitalist and anti-colonial pathways, pedagogy in children, the duality of resistance and creating, autonomy, feminisms, Rojava, and of course, Zapatistas. We dig into other topics too, so sit back and enjoy. Thanks for listening. Hello, Raúl. I'm so honored to have you be my first guest on this show. It's all about walking with change, and I can't think of a better guest. Thank you so much. I am definitely giving a homage to the Zapatistas idea of asking we walk with this show. And part of why I'm doing the show is to bring to the fore the questions or the partial questions that are bubbling up today for folks. But before we go maybe on some of those brambly filled paths of new questions, what I appreciate about your writing and your voice, Raúl, is that you are constantly showing us that not only are autonomous, decolonial, and anti-colonial worlds possible, but they are always already happening. And in so many places too, like you show us in this new book. So for our listeners who may not have encountered your work yet, or at least haven't read the English version of Constructing Worlds Otherwise, your fabulous new book, could you walk us through some of the reasons for writing it? What's the general scope? And then can you share some of the key concepts and notions in the book? In particularly, I'd love to hear you talk about what are societies in movement.
Thank you, Carla, for your questions. I'm not sure if I can respond all, but I will say that the Zapatista uprisings and other movements show us that the construction of new worlds or new relationships between persons and between humans and nature is not for the future in a long term, is now being, not in a whole country, not in a whole continent, like we thought or we see in the old revolutions. But I can say that in some parts of some countries or regions, there are working these new relations. And based in this relation, they can build clinics and schools and plantations without agrotoxics and so. And this is important because the traditional overview, the traditional Marxist or anarchist ideology says that a really revolution or really change comes when first you take the power, the state power, in a whole country. When you change like the feminist movements, when you change the relations in a part or between involving dozens or hundreds of persons, this is not so important for this idea of a social change. Then I think this ideology, this critical thought, is focused in the state. The state is for these ideas the central point of the change. Then when you don't have the control of the state, then you can do nothing. And I respond in this way. Feminist movement, I learned as man from the feminist movement that you can change the world, changing the situation, the place of the persons, women in this case, in the world, without taking power. And indigenous peoples make the same as the feminists. They are changing the place of these persons, these communities in the world, with dignity, with emancipation, with constructing some new things like school or clinics or healthcare without this power. Then for me, in 1994, this was a very heavy light because I was in the shadow. I come from the 17th, from the revolutionary wave in Latin America, Che Guevara, guerrillas, and so. And I saw that the revolutions in China, in Russia, in other countries, they don't construct the new relations, the new world. They repeat the old problems of the ruling classes. And mostly I saw that these processes, these revolutionary processes, they are in the same way as the old ruling classes. And they in this revolution they born a new ruling class, similar to the old mandarins in China or the old apparatchik from the Tsar in Russia, in the old Russia. Then this is a structural problem. When you control the state, you perhaps the leader is a very nice person, but the other workers under the leader and between the leader and the population, they are working like the ancien regime, no culture. And then when Zapatista uprisings began, I saw that you can change very important things only without state power. When you catch the state power, the most important tendency is to reproduce the culture, the state culture. And there is only one state culture around the world. It's patriarchal, it's hierarchical, it's colonialist, and so. Then, for me, was very enlightenment, no? And I saw that they do indigenous peoples, not the vanguard, not the illustrated vanguard, normally academics and professionals and so, that leads the populations. Then the population is leading but themselves. This word, for me, very beautiful, mandar obedeciendo. People decided in assemblies or in any different way, and the leaders obeyed these decisions. Then I think the first 10 years, I was very close learning from Zapatista uprising. After this, I began trips around Latin America, sometimes to Europe, but and today to the last month to the United States. And then I discovered that Zapatistas are not alone. There are a lot of experiences around a lot of countries not so big and so intense and so integral as the Zapatista uprising, that they made a completely new world with new power, with, I said, education, care, and also production and justice decisions. But in little, you see in Brazil, in Argentina, in Chile, in Bolivia, in Colombia, in a lot of countries, similar movements, not inspired necessarily in the Zapatista uprising movement, but inspired in the self-history. And you can see the Zapatistas are not alone. And then the last 20 years, I went to a lot of movements. Perhaps I knew in 30 years between 500 or 800 organizations. Perhaps I don't make I don't have the exact number, but I know, for example, only in Brazil, I know 40, 50 organizations, another 40, 50 in Argentina, sometimes little organizations for 20 persons, but organizations. And then I see that the differences and the different way of construct the new world, for example, peasants for different countries are different as indigenous peoples, or Black peoples, Afro-American movements are working in the same right, but with many differences, no? And the urban peripheries are also very different as the indigenous organization, but they are resisting capitalism, resisting colonialism, and building perhaps one movement mostly in education, another movement mostly in ecological ways, and so. But this is working now in Latin America.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that was a really good overview. Like, I think it's really important that this distinction from social movements as such, like the way that they're usually spoken of from North America or from Europe, as like lobbying the state or trying to reform things or take over the state, like you said. You know, I came across a line in your book where you said, "It is clear that the left is a long way from breaking with patriarchy and colonialism. And it seems that it's very much tangled in with hierarchy still because of social relationships, but it's also about this, and you unpack this really well, about the hegemony of modernity or historical teleological ideas. And I'm wondering if you could maybe break that open a bit more.
I learned from the United States experience the difference between social movement and people, pueblos in movement. For example, last month I was in 4 universities in different encampments in solidarity with Palestinians. This is a social movement. There are groups of the society struggling against the ruling class or against the academic hierarchy for some proposals or demands. Good. But if I see the history, I see Black Panthers Party or Young Lords in Chicago or other movements in this period. This is not a social movement. This is a movement of another society, because they were building clinics and schools and restaurants for the popular kitchens, no, and so for the children's breakfast or meals. And the Black Panthers were in the way to be a people, a pueblo in movement. And then the repressions cut this way. But I am speaking about the American experience. It's very interesting because the Black Panthers learn us the double ways to struggle. One way is resisting the ruling class, resisting repressions, resisting the police, and so. And the other part is typical from the pueblos in movement, is constructing. Why is constructing? Because people living in these areas, people like Fanon spoke, living in the non-being zone, the zone where the people has not rights, and the violence is every day coming against them, then these people has not a really education, has not a really health, no? And they need this, and has not a good meal, a good eat. They could eat with quality. Then the movements has this work to resolve these elementary problems from these people. Then, when the movement works constructing this care, education, food, and so, the resistance growth. Then it's a relationship between resisting and creating new world. When you resist, you can have enough time and space to build the new. And when you build the new, the resistance will be stronger. And this is a relation between these 2 points, these 2 legs. You are walking with 2 legs, resistance and creating, is the most important characteristic of the pueblos in movements around Latin America. Some people, some pueblos, has also a self-government. The Zapatistas, for example, they have the juntas de buen gobierno, no? These wordings. There is the power in this land. But the Nazas in South Colombia, they had cabildos. There is a Spanish name, is the organization who take the decisions that the communities must work for them. And this is new, I will take about a new moment. In the Amazon basin in North Peru, you have now 9 autonomous governments from 9 different Amazonic peoples. And in the next year, they think there will be 6 more. Then perhaps in 5 years, you have 15 autonomous governments in northern Peru. This is a new way. Why also in Brazil, there you have more than 40, not governments, more than 40 autonomous process to mark the limits. They are fighting against the mining and corporations that invade the territories. All this movement has self-territories, self-defense guards, and self-authorities. This is a new way to change the world. Territory, self-organizations, self-power, self-defense. And the women in all these territories has a very important role. Because when the people can stabilize the everyday life, then the women are very important in care, in food, and in education. There are the spaces for the women because care is women today around the world. Then the old idea from taking power, organization in hierarchical form, and the vanguard. And so these ideas are changing now for a completely new cosmovision of this change, of this possibility of construct new worlds. The basis is the community, and then taking the starting from the community, the peoples can build different works and different constructions inspired in communities' logic. For example, one very important characteristic of the communities is the rotation. You never has a permanent leader. The leader must rotate. This is the sabiduría, the old ideas of the ancients of the communities. Never concentrate power in a leader. Never. I read a lot, a very interesting anthropologist from French anthropologist, Pierre Clastres. He said 50 years ago, he lived in the Guaranis, with the Guaranis peoples, pueblos. He said all the energy from the community is to make that the leader has not power. Leader without power. This is not comprehensible for the Occidental cosmovision. This is anything different. When the leader has power, we have a problem. When the leader concentrates the power, we have a problem. Then we need to work that this leader obeyed the community. Because having power is not obeying the community. Self-ideas. And then they need to cut this and to return the power to the community. And what's the paper to the leader? Transmission, ideas, resolutions, decisions, to make that the common decisions can work. This is the paper, the role of the leader. It's not to fly alone, to make, to construct a power over the community. The leaders in the really indigenous communities, the leader works for the community. It's a service. It's not an advantage. It's not a benefit for the leader. It's an obligation, and you need to work for, not for you, for the community. This is completely different as we see in the Occidental politics, no? And and I think this is very interesting to learn this different kind of politics, because the indigenous peoples made politics, but another community, and other politics. The objective of this politic is to reproduce the people, the pueblo, not to change the world. Changing the world is reproducing our culture, our cosmovision, our form, everyday life, and this is the most important.
Hear, hear. Yes, thank you. I think that there's so many threads I could weave with what you just said, but I would like to talk about pedagogy a little bit in schooling because most of my work for the past 25 years has been about creating intergenerational learning alternatives to schools, learning spaces that run in are very anti-colonial and I definitely, as someone who is interested in haunted pedagogies, but I really liked how you spoke about pedagogy in the book. You might be the first person ever who I was like, huh, maybe I won't abandon the word entirely. And and I think like connecting it to what you were saying about relationships in the community is like one of the things when I study autonomy and autonomous communities is I'm always first thing I ask is where are the children? Like where are the social relationships with children? Are they at the state school down the street in the away from this movement or is it happening within the movement? Because of course that colonial education or that hierarchical relationship with children means that whatever you've created in your social in this movement or this community only lasts one generation because those children have been raised with a lack of autonomy. So all of that, I noticed that you've mentioned children a few times, and I'm curious if you can share some examples of that relationship between adults and children in these spaces, in these communities that you've studied and visited.
Are you a teacher, Carla?
No, I've definitely come at it from a more, I guess, popular education, maybe you could call it.
Oh, me too.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, I see that in the indigenous education, for example, the children are the center of the education. Normally, in the Occidental school, the center is the teacher or the state, because the teacher is the representative from the state in the school. Okay? Then the education is centered in the child. Then what means that in the everyday school, in the everyday room? The teacher must not understand what the teacher is saying, is learning or teaching. The children must have another time for discover that they know and they have the capability to do, to work with ideas and with hands. If you think that the ideas are going into the person by the brains, you are completely in a wrong way. If you work with your hands and with your brains, with your entirely body, then you can understand your body and the body of the nature and from the other persons. And then when, for example, one only a little example, when the teacher come in these Zapatista schools, for example, they has a problem on the table, no, on the table, no. They write a question, but the response is not from from the child as individuals. The group must work together to respond, all the group as one person's. Then what learns this group? Learns to work in the common work, learns how to work in common. We said in Spanish or in Quechua, minga is the collective work. Ah, good. Then what is the really difference between the Occidental and the indigenous school? It's not that you know the names of the rivers, of the oceans, of the numbers, of the geography, or the anything different specializations. But an Occidental kid learns the individual way, the individual triumph, the individual, no? And the indigenous peoples learn the common work. How work with others. Wow, this is very, very interesting, no? Because what you, Carla, and me learned, and when we have 8 years, these things that I learned, I forget. And it was not so interesting for our life. But when I learn to work with others, today it's very difficult in the big cities, working with others, relations with others, because the other is like an enemy. I need to be alone with my phone and my computer, and the world is only this computer. Then if you learn to work with others, then you can be a different person. No? This is the first example. I saw in one indigenous community in Chiapas a woman coming there, and he take T-shirts from a soccer team from Italy that was the Inter from Milan, international from Milan, was very solidary with the Zapatistas communities. And then in a basketball court, in a basketball space, they said to the children, you stay here in one corner of the basketball cancha or basketball space, and the 5 or 6 T-shirts in the other side. And when I said yes, now you must run and the first take the T-shirts. Then this women, young women, said now, and no one moves. They stay, and they see the children 8, 5, 12 years, and then come together, all was taken by the hands to the T-shirts, and then decided to use all the T-shirts. The idea of I take my T-shirt because I run quicker than you, this is not in the mind of these youngs. And this is the revolution against modernity, illustrated and Occidental point of view. When the Occidental point of view win, then we can't survive as humans. Some can survive, but not as humans, only like avatars, no, or like a Superman. No, to survive as humanity, we need to be solidary. We need to see that the other is my brother. When we all work as brothers, then we are changing the world. This is the lessons I could explain about the Zapatist uprising. It's not a political proposal. It's not a very large manifesto or book. No. Are very simple differences in the everyday life.
I loved all of that. I really appreciate you using a concrete example of cooperation, of that heart-centered care for one another from the children in the basketball court. Thank you. It's definitely been my experience working with young folks in a way where responsibility is at the center of their autonomy. Like they are invited in to be part of the creation of the space and responsible for it. And there is this level of cooperation and solidarity, as you say, that permeates. Yeah, but it's rare, and particularly in North America. It's like you said, in larger cities. And it is the revolution. Where was I going to go? I have so many questions, but I'm really respect your time. I did have some like really concrete questions, but I would love to.
You spoke about Apo, no? Auckland.
Yeah. Oh, do you want to talk about Auckland too? Yes, that's really important. Yeah.
Yes. Before speaking about this, I have forgotten to speak some little thing about autonomy.
Yes, please.
I see a difference in my first idea about autonomy, and the European or North ideas of autonomy, and the indigenous or Zapatistas ideas of autonomy. One idea is to think in autonomy as an institution. We have an institution that works in an autonomy mode. But for the Zapatistas, autonomy is a practice. And you need the autonomy in all the levels. You need the autonomy for each children. Then in this school, the children works in an autonomy way when they work with others. Or each family is autonomous because they have self plantations, or chickens to eat. They have all the things, coffee, corn, and vegetables in a very little territory, in a very little land. And then the community is also autonomy, because he has a self-land, common works, and vegetables, and chicken, and all the things. Then the autonomy is in all the levels. I can say that autonomy is a way of life. And then all our spaces must be autonomous. In the health, in the clinic, the little clinic, 4 persons, the persons like osteopaths, we said they work with the huesos, the soul, and the person who works with the children, with the when the moment of the borns, the children comes to life, and the person who works with the traditional medicine, herbs and so, and the person who works with the occidental pills. They speak as pills. Then these 4 are autonomous because the person who works with traditional herbs, they have also the plantation from these herbs, and so, no? And then every space must be autonomous. The autonomous is not everything in the hike, like an institution, and then I'm not autonomous. No, all our ways are, and this is a very different kind of our characteristics of autonomy. It's a everyday practice, and every day you began from zero, but the idea of the Catholic Church is my life is very difficult. I'm walking, around the desert and so very, very heavy. And then I arrived to the paradise. No, autonomy is not a paradise. Every day when you stand up, you began a new day constructing autonomy and working in autonomy. It's very different, no? It's not a place where you, individual or collective, arrive. It's a kind of a way of life. Then the other thing was Kurds. Yes, a little bit of Kurds.
Yeah, that would be great.
I think the Kurd movement has different interests for me. One interest is only the ideas of Öcalan, of Apo. No, I think the critic from Apo to the Marxist heritage is too heavy, is too deep, and it's necessary that any persons do this. Because the left today, also the revolutionaries today, forget the autocritics, the self-critics. They only critique the capitalism, the state, the others, but not ourselves. We need, Mr. Wallerstein spoke in the last piece in some days before he died. The only thing we can do as movements to change the world now is to struggle with ourselves, with themselves, the movements. Because when we repeat the history, we don't change nothing. And then Apple made this in the first books with a very important critique to the idea that the capitalism is an economy. He said capitalism is a power, a special power, the state power. Of course, it be a capitalist economy, but this is not the center. The center is one kind of power. Then Apo is very critical with patriarchy in the movements. And the second thing is that the women movement, the genealogy movement, is also an ideology and a practice very important for change. Not only the women's, but only the place of the men. I have read a book, a pamphlet for about 50 pages. The title is Kill the Macho, or anything so, to kill the macho. And then the Wolf Academy, the Andrea Wolf Academy, explained that every year this academy, there are women or women there, works with men, groups of men, for 2 or 3 months, teaching the man and discussing with the man the ego, the machismo, and all the life of the man around the world. We are a problem. And it's the only example I know that the men are involved in the feminist movement. But I don't know if I must speak this, but I will say some things. I have a lot of friends, women, academics, feminists, that they built a bubble about we are feminist, pure, not contaminated, and we are the really feminist. Here is not one man, here is not an normal women from the peripheries, urban peripheries, no? Old and black or Latin and so without studies. No, these women know, only we, illustrated. And then this don't change the world. I love bell hooks. The critics from bell hooks to these women or the Combahe collective group, no? They are black feminists, some lesbians. They made a heavy critic to the white academic women that thinks they are in the paradise of the feminists. No. We need to work with the men, with the not advanced women, no, the not vanguard women, the normal women from the peripheries, and so. And I have learned this from the Rojava and the Kurd women movement. And this is very important because this other feminist movement is not anti-capitalist. No, it's feminist, but not really anti-patriarchal. But today you can't be anti-patriarchal if you are not also anti-capitalist and anti-colonialist. Then I think it's a very important discussion about how to change the place from the women and the men. We must be involved and we must discuss our ego. And I see some women, academic women, friends from me, have the same ego as me, like man. No, we must discuss, we must struggle against our ego. If we don't do that, we can't change nothing.
Bravo. I love it. That's a really good distinction about Rojava and the women working with the men. I can't agree more. And I'm also, bell hooks is definitely was definitely someone who inspired me on how to show up in community as a decolonial feminist, because it is about social relationships again. She was one of the only feminists of her time who sent her children as well, because she was like, that's where it all gets seated, in the relationship with children, especially the patriarchy from the patriarchal parents is what she called it. You ended your book with a breathtaking epilogue titled Sowing Without Reaping, obviously about the Zapatistas. And I am 100% with you that they still provide an incredible amount of inspiration and a compass for us to find our way on this anti-capitalist, anti-colonial, anti-hierarchical pathway. And and so as the storm rages on, can you share with us what some of the concrete ways they still inspire you? And just the whole idea of sowing without reaping, and anything else you want to say about that.
Now I return to Chiapas this year. I will return. I was last year there. And I am learning, I am reading and studying the last 20 communiques from the Zapatistas. I don't understand all, but I see they are working to survive the collapse. They think that is coming a very heavy collapse against the peoples, against the normal people. I remember Mr. Zuckerberg, he has bought an island in Hawaii to survive the collapse. But we as pueblos, we need survive in collective the collapse. This is not an individual way. And then they are talking about the collapse. They are preparing the bases and the communities to survive or to live in the collapse. And also they are making a new structure, no, because they think this is very nice. They had the boards and the autonomous municipalities, but they said this was very nice because it was an horizontal structure, but in the everyday life, they works on a pyramid. And this is in two ways very interesting. First one, because they said the structure is not so important as how the relations works, no? And then the second thing they said, we have the pyramid and we need to cut the top. And then when they had one board, they have dozens of groups of local government. And this is very interesting because normally when the revolutionaries build anything, they conserve this. And then 20 years ago, or 30 years ago, they built the autonomous municipalities and the boards, and then said, no, this can't work. Because we need then, in 120 years after the collapse, this new world must be not pyramid. And then now we cut the top. Wow, this is really revolutionary because the other way is conservative. I build a party, hierarchical party, and I conserve this party. Or I take the power or build a popular power, for example, and I conserve this power. Then they are making anything beautiful, I think, in Chiapas in this moment. And I will reflect more about this. I will think about this. I will research. I will study more about this new way of the Zapatistas movement. And I'm very happy that they understand this new moment of the wars, the two big problems, wars around the world and the climate change, no? And these two things are working together against the peoples, against the pueblos. And then they understood very, very good this moment, and they changed the organization to survive the next year or decades.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really loved what was in the book, but I'm really looking forward to seeing what you experience and uncover and share with the world. And like, I think what was really exciting for me was to see how they were continuing to, and this is if they have to, if they're being, as you said, I love that piece about autonomy being every day you wake up and you start at zero. Like, of course, the Zapatistas have to change constantly and walk with change because it's constantly changing, the world around them and the relations. So, like, wrapping the show up and kind of going back to the theme of the show, are there any questions that are kind of occupying your time right now that are bubbling up that you would be willing to? I'm kind of, what I want to kind of do with the show is to show people out there that, you know, we're all struggling with questions and sometimes don't even know what the questions are yet on the horizon, but kind of want it, someone that, like, is thoughtful and well thought out and does the deep research and thinking. You know, what are you grappling with today, if you're willing to share?
Today, in this period, I'm working or I am looking for spirituality, but not New Age. Because last year I was some days in a Guarani, in Brazil, a Guarani community, and then they have a home, a big home, where every day they sung and they make the rituals, and is a house not from religion, is spirituality. And then I discover, I'm too old to discover anything new, but I could discover this, that spirituality is the center of the community. I thought before, because I am trained in the Marxist ideology, and I thought before that the key of the community was the common land, no? The property, the common property. But now I discover that the key of the community is spirituality. And then I saw this in the Guaranis peoples, pueblos in Brazil. I saw the same in March in Garífunas pueblos in Honduras. And I'm working in this way. And I discussing and I interchanging ideas and point of view of my Mayas friends in Chiapas about the centrality of the spirituality in the resisting to capitalism. Then this is my work today, and I think in the next years, because in the critical thought, spirituality is not important. In the critical thought, Marxist, anarchist, and every thought, they think that, like Marx, that religion is opium of the pueblos. And when I speak about spirituality, I must say it's not the same as the church. It's not the same as the religion. The religion is a hierarchical organization, no, the church. This is a practice. It's the difference about institution and practice. It could have the same name, but it's very different. And now I'm working spirituality, and it's my work for the next years.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing. I can't wait to see what you come up with. I just want to share that that is kind of where I've gotten in the last year too. And it's been influenced by some indigenous friends and people who in North America who are really pushing against the hegemonic ideas of modernity by saying, you know, the late Clee Benelli just wrote a book called No Spiritual Surrender, and seems to be the root, and it's non-religious, it's non-New Age, and I keep saying this to my friends that there's something about spirituality. I've been obsessed with it for the last 4 years. There's something about spirituality that as a way to move away from that ideology in a deep, profound way. So I'm so excited to hear what you create and your own journey. And I think it's really connected to autonomy and all that. So thank you. What a beautiful way to wrap this session. Is there anything else that you would like to say that we didn't cover?
So it was very nice speaking with you. I'm very grateful for this interview. And we could speak for days, perhaps.
Yes.
In this moment, it's very nice what we had spoken and interchange and so. And I am very, very grateful for you.
Yeah, me too, Raúl. Thank you so much for being here.